Earth was marked as the next target. Then one message threw the galaxy into hysteria. Part 1. The Designation. The galactic hegemony had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. In all that time, they had conquered more than 4,000 worlds. No species had ever stopped them. No planet had ever survived their attacks. When the hegemony decided to take a world, that world was taken. It was simple. It was clean. It was absolute. The hegemony was not a single species. It was a collection of hundreds of alien races, all working together under one government. Some had joined willingly. Most had been forced. But after thousands of years, nobody remembered the difference anymore. The system worked. Planets provided resources. Citizens provided labor. Soldiers provided conquest. And the hegemony grew ever larger. High Arbiter sat in his chamber on the capital world, reviewing the latest reports from the survey probes. Was a species made of living crystal. His body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows across the walls. He had held his position for 300 years, and in that time, he had authorized the conquest of over 200 worlds. Today's report was unremarkable. A small yellow star in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. Third planet from the star. Oxygen atmosphere. Liquid water. Native intelligent species. The species called themselves humans. They called their planet Earth. Studied the data with mild interest. The humans were primitive by galactic standards. They had only recently learned to leave their own planet. They still fought wars among themselves. They had not even unified under a single government. Their technology was thousands of years behind the hegemony's most basic ships. The military assessment classified them as a Category 2 threat. This meant they might have some weapons, but nothing that could challenge even a small hegemony patrol fleet. The recommendation was standard. Send a conquest fleet, secure the planet, absorb the population into the hegemony's labor force. Authorize the designation with barely a thought. Earth became target 4127 in the Great Record of Conquest. A fleet of 300 warships, commanded by Fleet Admiral, was ordered to depart from the staging grounds. They would reach Earth in 40 standard cycles. Moved on to the next report. He did not think about Earth again. 6,000 light-years away, on that small blue planet, a woman named Parker was working late at the Arecibo Observatory in Rico. Was an astronomer. She spent her nights watching the stars, looking for signals, searching for patterns in the endless noise of space. Tonight she found something. At first she thought it was an error. The readings showed objects moving toward the solar system, large objects, many of them, moving in a formation that could not be natural. Called her colleague, Dr. Daniel, who was sleeping at home nearby. Daniel arrived within an hour, still wearing his pajamas under his coat. He looked at the data and went very quiet. "This isn't possible," he said. "I know," replied, "but look at the numbers, 300 objects, each one bigger than anything we've ever built, and they're coming straight toward us." Daniel ran the calculations again, then again. The results were always the same. "We need to tell someone," he said. Within a week, every major government on Earth knew the truth. Within 2 weeks, the world knew. The news spread like fire. Aliens were real and they were coming. Panic followed. Markets crashed. Riots broke out in major cities. Religious groups declared the end times had arrived. Some people fled to the countryside. Others built shelters underground. Many simply refused to believe. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. The leaders of the world's nations began to talk to each other. Old enemies sat at the same table. Countries that had been rivals for generations suddenly found they had a common problem. The United Nations held an emergency session. After 3 days of intense debate, they created the Terran Defense Council. Every nation with space capability agreed to join. Every military force agreed to cooperate. For the first time in human history, humanity was truly united. Admiral was chosen to lead the combined forces. She was 62 years old, with gray hair and hard eyes. She had commanded naval fleets for 30 years. She had never lost a battle, but she had also never fought an enemy from beyond the stars. "What do we have?" she asked her staff during their first meeting. The answer was not encouraging. Earth's combined space force consisted of 17 ships. Most were research vessels or cargo transports that had been quickly fitted with weapons. Only 3 were actual military craft, and even those were designed for patrol duties, not real combat. Against 300 alien warships, it was nothing. "We can't win a direct fight," Admiral admitted to the council. "We don't have the ships, we don't have the weapons, we don't have the experience. If they want to take Earth, they can take Earth." "Then what do we do?" asked the American president. Admiral was quiet for a moment, then she spoke. "We make them not want to." Dr. Gregory Lane was a linguist at MIT. He studied languages, including dead ones that nobody spoke anymore. He had spent his career trying to understand how different peoples communicated with each other. Now, he was trying to understand how aliens communicated. The approaching fleet was not silent. They broadcast signals constantly. Most were encrypted, but some were not. Working with teams of mathematicians and computer scientists, Gregory had begun to decode their language. It was not easy. The aliens thought differently than humans. Their grammar was strange. Their concepts were unfamiliar, but language was language, and eventually patterns emerged. After 2 weeks of work, Gregory could read basic messages. After 3 weeks, he could write them. "They call themselves the hegemony," he reported to Admiral. "They've conquered thousands of worlds. They see themselves as bringing order to chaos. They think they're doing the galaxy a favor." "And us?" the Admiral asked. "We're target 4127. They've already planned our conquest. They've assigned a fleet. To them, this is routine." Admiral considered this information. Then she smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Then we need to show them that we're anything but routine." The plan was simple, though not safe. Earth would send a single ship to meet the alien fleet before it reached the solar system. The ship would carry a message, not a surrender, not a plea for mercy, something else entirely. The ship was named the TDS Messenger. It was small, fast, and carried no weapons. Its crew was only 12 people, all volunteers. Every one of them understood they might not come back. Captain Samuel Drake was chosen to command the mission. He was 45 years old, a former test pilot who was known for staying calm when everything went wrong. He had flown experimental aircraft that had crashed, exploded, and fallen apart around him. He had walked away from each disaster with barely a scratch. Some people said he was lucky. Others said he was just too stubborn to die. "Our mission isn't a fight," Captain Drake told his crew before departure. "Our mission is to deliver a message. We're going to make first contact with an alien civilization. We're going to talk to them, and we're going to make them listen." "What if they don't want to listen?" asked Lieutenant Park, the communications officer. Captain Drake looked at his crew. These 12 people had volunteered to fly into the unknown, to face a fleet that could destroy them without effort, armed with nothing but words. "Then we make them," he said. The TDS Messenger launched 3 days later, carrying humanity's hopes into the darkness between the stars. Earth was marked as the next target. Then one message threw the galaxy into hysteria. Part 2: The Archive. Before every conquest, the hegemony gathered information. They studied their targets carefully. They learned about their history, their culture, their strengths, and their weaknesses. All this information was stored in a massive database called the Subjugation Archive. The archive contained records of every species the hegemony had ever conquered. It described how they lived, how they fought, and how they died. It was a library of extinction, written in cold data. Junior Archivist had been assigned to create Earth's entry in the archive. She was young by galactic standards, barely 200 years old. Her species, though, were known for their attention to detail. They had 4 eyes, which helped them see patterns that others missed. They had 3 stomachs, which helped them digest almost anything. And they had a curious nature that sometimes got them into trouble. Approached her task with her usual thoroughness. She gathered every transmission that Earth had sent into space over the past century. Television broadcasts, radio signals, internet traffic that had leaked into the void. She fed it all into her analysis systems and began to study. What she found surprised her. The humans were violent. This was not unusual. Most intelligent species were violent to some degree, but humans were violent in ways that seemed almost insane. They had fought 2 massive wars within a single generation, killing millions of their own kind. They had developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had created poisons that could kill everything on their planet if released. And they had done all this to each other, not to alien invaders, not to external threats, to their own species, their own families, their own neighbors. Read about the trenches of what humans called World War I, where soldiers lived in mud and died by the millions for tiny patches of ground. She read about the concentration camps of World War II, where one group of humans systematically murdered another for no reason except hate. She read about the atomic bombs dropped on cities full of civilians, burning hundreds of thousands of people in bright flashes of light. Her stomachs churned. In all her years of studying conquest targets, she had never seen anything like this. Most species fought for resources or territory. Humans seemed to fight simply because they could. But that was not what disturbed the most. What disturbed her was what came after. Every time the humans destroyed themselves, they rebuilt. Every time they fell into darkness, they climbed back out. After their great wars, they did not collapse into permanent chaos. Instead, they created new organizations, new agreements, new ways of living together. They formed something called the United Nations. They wrote declarations about human rights. They made laws against the very atrocities they had committed. They had a concept that could not translate into hegemony language. The closest word was redemption. It meant that no matter how terrible your past actions, you could change. You could become better. You could be forgiven. This idea did not exist in the hegemony. Once a species was conquered, they stayed conquered. Once a crime was committed, it was recorded forever. There was no redemption. There was only order. Also notice something else strange about the humans. They had developed nuclear weapons decades ago. They had enough of these weapons to destroy their planet many times over, but they had not used them, not since those first 2 bombs. Instead, they had sat with their weapons pointed at each other for generations. They had come close to using them many times. Once, a sensor error had nearly started a war. Once, a single officer had refused to launch his missiles even when ordered to do so. Again and again, humans had looked into the face of their own extinction and stepped back. No species in the archive had ever done this. Most species, once they developed weapons of total destruction, used them. They destroyed themselves or were destroyed by others. Humans were different. Humans had the power to end everything and chose not to. Brought her findings to her supervisor, senior archivist. He was a, high arbiter, though much older and more worn. His crystal body had lost its shine over the centuries. These creatures are dangerous, told him. More dangerous than any Category 2 species I have ever studied. Barely looked at her report. They have 17 ships, we have 300, the danger is minimal. That is not what I mean. Pulled up her analysis on the main screen. Look at their rate of technological progress. 200 years ago, they could not fly. 150 years ago, they could not reach their own moon. 100 years ago, they could not leave their solar system. Now they have ships, weapons, and they are already learning our language. Made a dismissive sound. Primitive advancement, common among young species. No, insisted. Not common. I checked the records. Most species take thousands of years to progress this quickly. Humans did it in 2 centuries. If we do not conquer them now, what will they be capable of in another 200 years? They will not have another 200 years, replied. The fleet arrives in 38 cycles. This discussion is pointless. Wanted to argue more, but she knew it was useless. Had been doing this job for too long. He had seen thousands of species rise and fall. To him, humans were just another entry in the archive. But could not stop thinking about them. She continued her research in private, building a second report that would not go into the official archive. This report focused not on humanity's weaknesses but on their strengths, their resilience, their adaptability, their stubborn refusal to give up even when all hope seemed lost. She found a human word that seemed to capture their nature: spite. Humans would sometimes continue fighting not because they could win, but simply because they refused to let their enemies have an easy victory. They would burn their own cities rather than surrender them. They would die standing rather than live on their knees. This was not rational behavior by hegemony standards, but was beginning to understand that humans did not always act rationally, and that made them unpredictable. Meanwhile, the TDS Messenger was approaching the conquest fleet. Captain Samuel Drake had kept his crew busy during the long journey. They trained constantly, practicing emergency procedures and communication protocols. They studied everything the linguists on Earth had learned about the hegemony's language. They prepared for a meeting that might end in their deaths. Commander Maria Santos was Drake's second in command. She was 10 years younger than him, with dark hair and sharp eyes. She had chosen every member of the crew personally, selecting them for skills that might be useful in unpredictable situations. "Do you think they'll listen?" she asked Drake one night as they watched the stars through the observation window. Drake considered the question. "I don't know, but I think they'll be curious. We're the first species to come out and meet them. That has to count for something. Or they might just destroy us immediately." "They might," Drake admitted, "but I don't think so. The hegemony conquers worlds for resources and labor. Dead planets and dead people give them neither. They'll want to talk first, at least to understand what we're planning." Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "What are we planning, really?" Drake smiled slightly. "We're planning to scare them. With one ship." "Not with the ship," Drake said. "With what's inside it, with the message we carry. We're going to show them exactly what humanity is capable of, and then we're going to let them imagine what we might do next." The message had been prepared by teams of historians, psychologists, and strategists on Earth. It contained carefully selected images and videos from human history. Some showed humanity's worst moments: the wars, the atrocities, the weapons of mass destruction. But others showed something else: humanity's ability to survive, to recover, to fight against impossible odds. The message was designed to send one simple signal: we are not like your other conquests. We are something new, and you should be very, very careful. In 12 hours, the messenger would reach the fleet. In 12 hours, Captain Drake would deliver that message, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Earth was marked as the next target. Then one message threw the galaxy into hysteria. Part 3: The Message. The TDS Messenger was a tiny dot against the endless black of space. Behind it, far in the distance, was the pale blue light of Earth. Ahead of it, spread across millions of kilometers, was the hegemony conquest fleet. 300 ships. Some were as large as cities, covered with weapons that could crack planets open. Others were smaller, faster, designed to chase down any vessel that tried to escape. Together, they formed the most powerful military force that had ever approached human space. Captain Samuel Drake stood on the bridge of the Messenger and watched the fleet grow larger on his screens. His crew was quiet around him. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing they might die. but knowing something and facing it were two different things. "Sir," said Lieutenant Park, the communications officer, "they've detected us. I'm reading multiple targeting systems locking onto our position." Drake nodded calmly. "Expected. Begin broadcasting our identification signal. Let them know we want to talk." The signal went out, carefully crafted in the hegemony's own language. It identified the messenger as a diplomatic vessel. It requested communication with the fleet commander. It did not beg or plead. It simply asked. For several long minutes, there was no response. Drake could feel the tension on the bridge. Every second that passed was another second the aliens might decide to simply destroy them. Then the main screen flickered, and a face appeared. Fleet Admiral was a species that had been among the first conquered by the hegemony nearly 10,000 years ago. His kind were massive creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces were flat, with small eyes and mouths full of grinding teeth. They were not beautiful by any standard, but they were effective warriors. Had commanded conquest fleets for over 400 years. He had overseen the subjugation of 63 worlds. None had ever successfully resisted him. None had ever surprised him. Until now. "You are the creatures from the target world," rumbled. His voice was deep, like stones grinding together. Drake stepped forward slightly, making sure he was visible on the transmission. "I am Captain Samuel Drake of the Terran Defense Ship Messenger. I represent the people of Earth. I carry a message for you and your fleet." "We do not negotiate with targets," replied. "Your world has been designated. Your conquest is scheduled. These things are not subject to discussion." "I'm not here to negotiate," Drake said. "I'm here to warn you." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. It sounded like boulders falling. "Warn us. You have one small ship, we have 300, your technology is primitive, your weapons are toys. What could you possibly warn us about?" "About what happens if you invade our world." Drake gave a signal to his crew. The transmission shifted. Instead of his face, the screen now showed images, videos, recordings from human history, carefully selected and arranged for maximum impact. The first images were of war. The trenches of World War I, filled with mud and bodies. Soldiers charging into machine gun fire, dying by the thousands. Artillery shells turning green fields into moonscapes of craters and death. "These are images from our past," Drake's voice said over the footage. "One of our great wars. It lasted 4 years. 20 million of us died. We fought over land, over pride, over things that seem small now. But we fought." The images changed. Now they showed World War II, tanks rolling across Europe, cities burning, the concentration camps with their piles of bodies and hollow-eyed survivors. This was 20 years later, another war, bigger than the first, 60 million dead this time. We killed each other in ways that our ancestors could not have imagined. We built factories for murder. We made death into an industry. Then the mushroom clouds, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the bright flash, the rising column of smoke and fire, the shadows of people burned into walls by the heat of atomic explosions. And then we learned to split the atom. We built weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. 200,000 people died in 2 days. We had created the power to end our own species. Watched in silence. Other officers on his bridge had stopped their work to stare at the images. None of them had ever seen anything quite like this. Most species, when they reached this level of violence, destroyed themselves. The fact that humans had survived was unusual. "You are violent," said finally. "This is not uncommon. Many species are violent." "Yes," Drake agreed, "but let me show you what makes us different." The images changed again. Now they showed the Cold War, maps of the world divided into 2 sides, missiles in silos ready to launch, submarines lurking in dark waters, carrying enough nuclear warheads to end civilization. For 50 years we pointed these weapons at each other. For 50 years we came close to using them. Our leaders threatened each other. Our militaries planned for the end of the world. And yet we never pushed the button. We never launched the missiles. We had the power to destroy everything, and we chose not to. Drake's face returned to the screen. His expression was calm, but his eyes were hard. Do you understand what that means? We are a species that developed the ultimate weapon and decided not to use it. Not because we couldn't. Not because someone stopped us. Because we chose. Because even in our worst moments, some part of us wanted to survive, wanted to be better. Shifted uncomfortably. This is irrelevant. Your past conflicts are internal matters. They do not affect our conquest. Don't they? Drake leaned closer to the camera. Let me tell you what will happen if you invade Earth. You will win the battle. Your fleet is larger. Your technology is better. You will take our planet, but you will not have peace. More images appeared. Resistance fighters in occupied territories. Guerrilla soldiers hiding in jungles and mountains. Bombed buildings and sabotaged factories. Humans do not surrender easily. We have proven this over and over throughout our history. When we are occupied, we fight back. When we are conquered, we resist. We will blow up your factories. We will poison your supplies. We will kill your soldiers one by one in the dark in ways you cannot predict or prevent. We will destroy you, growled. We have crushed resistance before. Have you? Drake asked. Tell me, Admiral, how many of the species in your hegemony actually wanted to join? How many were forced? And how many of them, even now, after thousands of years, still dream of freedom? The question hung in the air, did not answer, but his silence said enough. You can conquer Earth, Drake continued, but you cannot hold it, not without destroying everything that makes it valuable. And even if you do, even if you kill every last human, the idea will remain. The idea that your hegemony can be, that a primitive species from a backwater planet made you bleed. Drake straightened up, his voice grew harder. So here is my warning, Admiral, my message to you and your fleet. If you come to Earth, we will fight you. Not because we can win, but because we refuse to lose without a struggle. We will make your conquest the most expensive in hegemony history. We will inspire every suppressed species in your empire to wonder, if the humans could resist, why can't we? He paused, letting the words sink in. Is that worth one planet? Is that worth the questions your other subjects will ask? Is that worth the cracks that will appear in your perfect order? The transmission ended. The screen went dark. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral sat in silence for a long time. His officers waited for orders. None came. Finally, one of them spoke. Admiral, should we destroy the human vessel? Did not answer immediately. He was thinking about something Junior Archivist had written in her report. Something about humans and their strange concept of spite. No, he said at last. Not yet. I want to know more about these creatures. Continue course to target world, but increase sensor coverage. I want to know everything they do. The fleet moved on, but something had changed. For the first time in 400 years of conquest, Admiral was not certain of victory. And that uncertainty would change everything. Earth was marked as the next target. Then one message threw the galaxy into hysteria. Part 4: The Hysteria. Junior Archivist had made a mistake, or perhaps she had made a choice. Either way, her unauthorized report about humanity had escaped her control. She had only meant to share it with a few trusted colleagues, scientists like herself who were curious about the strange species from Earth, researchers who might appreciate the unusual data she had collected. But information, once released, has a way of spreading on its own. Within days, copies of this report were circulating throughout the hegemony. It passed from one official to another, from one world to the next. By the time anyone thought to stop it, the damage was already done. The report did not just describe humanity's violence. It described their resilience, their impossible rate of technological advancement, their stubborn refusal to stay beaten, and it asked a question that made powerful people uncomfortable. What happens when the hegemony encounters a species that does not want to survive conquest but wants to win? They were the first to respond. Own species had provided 63 ships to Admiral's conquest fleet, but after reading the report, the Council called an emergency meeting. The discussion lasted 12 hours. This is not a normal conquest, the Council leader argued. These humans are not like other targets. They have already demonstrated they can access our communications. They have already sent a ship to meet our fleet. They have already issued a warning. No Category 2 species has ever done these things. We have defeated greater threats, another council member replied. Have we? Or have we simply never faced a true threat? The council leader pulled up projections on the main screen. According to this analysis, humans will reach technological parity with us in less than 100 years. If we conquer them now, we will spend those 100 years fighting an endless resistance. If we fail to conquer them, they will be our equals within a lifetime. Either way, the hegemony faces a challenge it has never encountered before. The vote was close, but in the end, they decided to withdraw their ships from the conquest fleet. Their official reason was a logistical problem. Supply lines stretched too thin, maintenance issues requiring immediate attention. Everyone knew the truth, but no one said it out loud. The followed within days. Their excuse was equally thin. A border dispute that had been dormant for 3 centuries suddenly required their military attention. Then they announced they were restructuring their forces. They cited internal concerns. They needed their ships for defensive purposes. Within a single cycle, Admiral's fleet of 300 ships had shrunk to less than half that number, and it was still shrinking. High Arbiter called an emergency session of the Designation Council. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted at each other across the ancient hall. Old alliances were breaking. Old grievances were resurfacing. The perfect order of the hegemony was cracking. "This is impossible," declared, his crystalline body pulsing with agitation. "We have conquered 4,000 worlds. No target species has ever caused this level of disruption." "The humans have done nothing but talk," one arbiter pointed out. "One ship, one message, that is all, and yet we are tearing ourselves apart." "The message contained classified information," said another. "Someone within our ranks is providing intelligence to them. This is treason." The accusation made everyone uncomfortable. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had held together because its members trusted each other. They might not like each other, but they trusted the system. Now that trust was breaking down. Watched the council session from her small office in the archive building. She had been suspended from her duties while an investigation determined if she was responsible for the leak. She probably was, though she had not meant for things to go this far. But as she watched the arguing representatives, she felt something unexpected: hope. The hegemony had always claimed to bring order to chaos. It had always said that conquest was necessary, that unity was strength, that resistance was futile. But now, for the first time, those claims were being questioned. Species that had been silent were speaking up. Ideas that had been forbidden were being discussed openly. Maybe thought the humans had already won, not through war but through words. They had planted a seed of doubt, and that seed was growing faster than anyone could have predicted. On Earth, the situation was being monitored carefully. Doctor led the Terran Defense Council's intelligence division. Her team had been intercepting hegemony communications since the messenger's departure. What they heard amazed them. "They're arguing," reported to Admiral. "Not just about us, but about everything. Trade agreements that were settled centuries ago are being reopened. Member species are demanding larger shares of resources. Some are even talking about leaving the hegemony entirely." Admiral studied the data streams, all of this from one message. "The message was just the spark," explained. The fuel was already there. These species have been suppressed for thousands of years. They stayed quiet because they believed the hegemony was too strong to challenge. Now they're not so sure. What about Captain Drake, the messenger? His expression darkened slightly. Still broadcasting, they've moved deeper into what remains of the fleet. Admiral has ordered them to stop transmitting and surrender. So far, they've refused. Can we contact them? We're trying, but the fleet is jamming most frequencies. We can receive some of their broadcasts, but we can't send replies reliably. On the messenger, Captain Drake knew he was pushing his luck. His small ship had survived far longer than anyone expected. Every hour they continued broadcasting was another hour the message spread through the hegemony fleet. The crew had settled into a strange routine. They broadcast during the day cycle, slept during the night cycle, and spent the rest of their time avoiding the alien ships that occasionally tried to corner them. The messenger was fast, and Park had become skilled at finding gaps in the fleet's formation. Commander Maria Santos approached Drake during a quiet moment. "We can't do this forever," she said. "Eventually they'll catch us or destroy us." "I know," Drake admitted, "but every hour matters. Our message isn't just for the aliens, it's for the species inside the hegemony. The ones who've been conquered, suppressed, forced into service. We're showing them that resistance is possible, that even a small ship can make a difference. And when we can't run anymore." Drake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Then we make sure they remember us. We make sure our last broadcast is something they'll never forget." Maria nodded slowly. She had known this might happen when she volunteered. They all had. But knowing and accepting were different things. "Whatever happens," she said, "it's been an honor serving with you, Captain." "The honor is mine," Drake replied. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be another long day." Back in the hegemony capital, High Arbiter made a decision. If the fleet could not stop the disruption, perhaps direct action would. He authorized a special operation. A small, fast ship would be sent to intercept the messenger and destroy it. No warnings, no negotiations, just silence. The ship launched within hours. It was called the Silent Blade, and it was designed for exactly this kind of mission. Its crew were specialists in quiet killing. They had never failed to eliminate a target. But as they raced toward the messenger, they too received a copy of his report. They read about the humans and their violent history. They read about their resilience and their spite. And some of them began to wonder, what exactly were they being asked to destroy? The galaxy held its breath. The conquest fleet was falling apart. The hegemony was cracking. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, a single human ship continued to broadcast its message of defiance. Everything was about to change. Earth was marked as the next target. Then one message threw the galaxy into hysteria. Part 5: The Reckoning. Fleet Admiral stood alone on the observation deck of his flagship. The stars stretched out before him, cold and indifferent. Behind him, what remained of his conquest fleet drifted in formation. 137 ships, less than half of what he had started with. In 400 years of service had never experienced anything like this. He had conquered 63 worlds. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed resistance movements, and brought countless species under hegemony control. He had never retreated. He had never failed. But now, staring into the darkness, he felt something he had not felt since he was a young soldier: doubt. The human ship was still out there somewhere. The messenger, they called it, a tiny vessel with 12 crew members and no weapons. It should have been nothing, a minor annoyance, a footnote in the conquest record. Instead, it had become a symbol. Every hour it survived, every broadcast it sent, every moment it evaded his ships, the humans proved their point. They could not be easily defeated. They would not simply surrender. They were something new. Thought about's report, which he had read dozens of times now. The young archivist had identified something that all the military analysts had missed. Humans did not fight to win. They fought to make their enemies bleed. They fought because they refused to go quietly. They fought out of spite. The hegemony had never faced an enemy like this. Their entire system was built on the assumption that conquered species would accept their fate. Resistance was punished harshly, but it was expected to fade over time. Eventually, every species learned that cooperation was easier than defiance. But what if a species never learned that lesson? What if they kept fighting, generation after generation, no matter the cost? What if every victory against them came at such a high price that it was barely worth winning? Pulled up the tactical projection. The silent blade was closing in on the messenger's last known position. In a few hours, the human ship would be destroyed. The broadcasts would stop. The symbol would be silenced. But would it matter? The damage was already done. The hegemony was fracturing. Species that had been loyal were questioning their allegiance. The council was in chaos. Even his own officers were whispering doubts. And if the humans had caused this much disruption with one ship and one message, what would happen when the fleet reached Earth itself? What would happen when they tried to land troops on a planet full of creatures who would rather die than submit? Ran the calculations in his mind. Conquest required resources, troops, supplies, administrators, enforcement. A standard conquest took decades to fully complete. Earth, according to all projections, would take centuries, maybe longer. The humans had billions of people. They had nuclear weapons. They had demonstrated they were willing to use them against each other. Would they hesitate to use them against invaders? Doubted it. And even if the hegemony won, even if they killed every human and took every resource, the cost would be enormous. Ships lost, soldiers dead, resources spent, all for one small planet in the outer arm of the galaxy. Was it worth it? The question surprised. In 400 years, he had never asked if a conquest was worth it. The question was meaningless. The hegemony conquered because that was what it did. Expansion was survival. Growth was strength. But's report had planted a different idea. What if expansion was weakness? What if growth beyond a certain point became impossible to sustain? What if the hegemony had reached its natural limit, and the humans were simply the first species to show them where that limit was? Close the tactical projection. He stood in silence for a long time, thinking. Then he made a decision. "Communications," he said into his console. "Connect me to the High Arbiter, secure channel." His crystalline face appeared on the screen moments later. "Admiral, report." "High Arbiter, I am requesting permission to open negotiations with the human vessel." The silence that followed was deafening. His body pulsed with colors that indicated shock, confusion, and anger. "Negotiations," said finally. "The conquest protocols do not allow for negotiations with a designated target." "The conquest protocols were written for species that know they are beaten," replied. His voice was calm, certain. "These creatures do not know they are beaten, and I am beginning to believe they never will." "You are suggesting we abandon the conquest." "I am suggesting we reconsider it. The cost of taking Earth will be higher than any conquest in hegemony history, and the cost of holding it may be higher still. We need more information before we proceed." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. "The Council is already questioning my leadership because of this situation. If we negotiate with a target species, it will be seen as weakness. Other species will wonder if they too can defy us." "Other species are already wondering that," pointed out. "Half my fleet has withdrawn. They have all found excuses to remove their ships. The questions are already being asked. The only choice now is how we answer them." The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Neither nor would describe what was said. But at the end, a decision was made. The silent blade was recalled. The messenger was not destroyed. Instead, a communication channel was opened between Admiral and Captain Drake. "You have caused considerable damage to my fleet," said when Drake's face appeared on his screen. "I have lost more ships to your message than I would have lost to your weapons." Drake nodded slightly. "That was the intention." "Why? You cannot defeat us militarily. Your planet has no chance of survival in a direct conflict. Why not simply surrender and accept the inevitable?" Drake considered the question carefully before answering. "Because surrender is never inevitable," he said. "Because even when you lose, you can choose how you lose. And because sometimes the act of fighting matters more than the outcome." Made the grinding sound that served as laughter for his species. "You are strange creatures, humans. You defy logic. You defy reason. You defy everything the hegemony stands for." "Thank you," Drake said. It was not a compliment. "I know, I'll take it as one anyway." 3 days later, the impossible happened. For the first time in 12,000 years of conquest, a hegemony fleet from a designated target. The official record stated that Earth had been reclassified as a Category 7 threat, too dangerous to engage without further study. The truth was simpler. The hegemony had blinked. Captain Drake and the messenger returned to Earth as heroes. The 12 crew members who had volunteered for a mission they did not expect to survive walked down the landing ramp to cheering crowds. Every one of them insisted they had simply done their jobs. In the years that followed, the hegemony began to change. Not immediately, not dramatically, but steadily. The cracks that the humans had created continued to spread. Species that had been silent began to speak. Alliances shifted. Power structures that had stood for started to crumble. Junior Archivist eventually visited Earth as part of the first diplomatic delegation. She found a world that matched everything her research had predicted. Chaotic, beautiful, and utterly unlike anything the hegemony had ever encountered. "You should be proud," she told Dr. Gregory Lane, who had become one of Earth's leading diplomats. "You changed the galaxy with nothing but words." Gregory smiled and shook his head. The words were just the beginning. The real message was simpler than that. What was the real message? "That we're harder to kill than we look," Gregory said, "and that we never ever give up. No matter how big the enemy, no matter how hopeless the odds, we fight. Sometimes we lose, but we always fight." Thought about this for a long time. Then she asked a question that had been bothering her since she first started studying humans. "Why? What drives you to resist even when resistance seems pointless?" Gregory considered his answer carefully. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Because giving up is worse than dying. Because we would rather burn than bend. Because somewhere deep inside every human being there is a voice that says, 'Not today, not without a fight, not while I can still stand.'" He looked out the window at the blue sky of Earth, the world that had been marked for conquest and had refused to be conquered. The hegemony thought they were dealing with another weak species, another easy target. They learned otherwise. And that lesson, Archivist, that lesson will echo through the galaxy for generations to come. The hegemony never attempted to conquer Earth again. The designation was eventually removed entirely. And in the great archives of the galaxy, humanity earned a new classification, Category 0, species not recommended for conflict under any circumstances. The reason was simple. Humanity had proven something that no other species had ever proven before. They had shown that even the smallest voice could shake the largest empire. They had demonstrated that courage, determination, and sheer stubborn refusal to quit could overcome any odds. They had taught the galaxy that hope is the most dangerous weapon of all. And the galaxy would never forget.